Now that opened up just last summer as the London House Hotel, but the building originally was completed in 1923 as an office building. Alfred Alschuler designed it. It's a 12-sided building, but very symmetric. Here the style is Beaux-Arts architecture after l'École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. And what they were teaching artisans and designers and architects in a very neoclassical way of designing buildings. That is, everything, particularly the ornamentation, based on a Greek temple. Nothing post-dating that period. So realize that this is an American interpretation of a French interpretation, of a Roman interpretation of ancient Greek architecture. Everybody's taken a whack at it through the centuries. And again, when we come out from under the bridge, I think you'll see exactly what I mean. Before we go under, though, look at the building closer to us, also on the left. Very narrow, has dark stone. Important also is just how these windows sort of form a pinstripe up. We're talking about how tall this building is, because the 1920s, it's all about what we can do. It's how fast we can go, how high we can go, all those things. So that is all involved in that particular kind of design. Now, for those of you in the front of the boat, in just a second or two, you'll see, if you look to the left, the main entrance, original entrance to this London Guarantee building, the London House Hotel. And you can see that there are Corinthian columns on either side of the entrance. You might remember from your school days. And if you look to the top of the building, you see those columns are repeated. Now this is one of the hallmarks of early Chicago commercial architecture. There's a base, a shaft, originally offices, and then a capital or a cornice, something to kind of cap it off, make it look like Barney of Ross Barney Jankowski here in Chicago designed it, along with Sasaki and Associates in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, throughout the cruise, we're going to talk a lot about a particular kind of style that was very prominent here in Chicago called mid-century modern design, and steel and glass rectangle, not a lot of decorative elements on it, but people tired of that come the 1980s, so things changed up a little bit. And if you look on the left-hand side, you see a building just on the other side of the bridge that, for all intents and purposes, is a Greek temple on a stick. But Captain Chris is taking us up the north branch of the river now, part of the river that originally was very industrial, but over the last couple of decades has changed to become a residential area, which is an interesting story. You see that sort of salmon-colored, dark salmon-colored brick building in front of us. That's called the Fulton House, and it's from 1896. It's the oldest building we'll see today. Frank Abbott designed it, and it was a cold storage facility, a warehouse to keep things cold. It wasn't a refrigerator, just they probably put ice in it. The triangle, he just liked that shape. He thought it was underutilized in architecture. And he used it in that next group of buildings here on the left. It's called River Cottages. They're 4 townhomes, 4 to 6 stories tall. Very contextual to the river. From the side, they almost look like sailboats, right? With portholes there along the sails. He himself was an avid sailor. So again, this is from, there's a big deck mostly over the railroad tracks. You can see the portholes with the fans that take the railroad exhaust, train exhaust out of that little area. The building itself has a bit of a curve to the front of it. That's because, again, it had to bump itself out in order to get, make it around some of those railroad tracks. It was sort of the only way they could do that. Plus, they've left room underneath so that they can, there's a possibility of a new high-speed rail train coming into the city, so that little bump helps them. The next building that's on the right-hand side here, I'll talk about more in depth on the way back, but they were built also between the river and the railroad tracks on the tiniest piece of land you can imagine. It'd be hard to knock this over, right? Just the varying heights. Works good. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't move, because it would have to, or for sure it would break. So under normal circumstances, it moves about 6 inches. Okay? Under a good windy day, it can go in excess, well, just about 3 feet, or just under a meter could be the sway on a good windy day. Totally safe. but it might be a day you want to work at home if you're bothered by that sort of thing, right? Because if there are any hangers in the closet, they're clanging together, and you know, things would tend to swing a little bit. So that might. If you're from Chicago, you might remember it used to be traffic court, I think 10 years ago or so. So our friend Bertrand Goldberg, I mentioned, remember No Straight Lines in Nature, has another development here along the river, and you see it now. It's one, you'll see one, the first of what are two round residential towers of Marina City. These were completed in the mid-1960s, and it also has, there's also behind that a saddle-shaped theater that's now the House of Blues, and then a hotel that originally was an office building. Now, kind of interesting, because across the street from it, here also on the left-hand side, a steel and glass rectangle, which is the last building that Ludwig Mies van der Rohe designed here in Chicago. It's the AMA Plaza, originally called the IBM building. It was 1970, 1 year after Mies died, but really is a triumph to this kind of style, steel and glass rectangle. It's 52 stories. Normally you'd feel kind of as it's right over you. Here though, slightly off the river, but look at how delicate that steel frame is. Really quite beautiful. First time double pane glass, one of the first times used here. And you know, his idea, Mies, universal space. I'll give you this big space, you decide what to do with it. He'd be very happy to realize that the bottom third of this building is now a hotel, the Langham Hotel. So, just as he envisioned. And then the Trump Tower is next here on the left-hand side. It's the second tallest building here in the city. And in the 21st century, you know, buildings typically are no longer held up with a steel frame. This building has a core of concrete with glass on the outside. It's less expensive and also affords more light and better views within all these buildings. So this building is what we call core and outrigger. There's again a core of concrete. Then the floors acting sort of like arms that are attached to these caissons here, these round portions that go into the ground, into the bedrock. So it's sort of like an American flag coming out of it. The Tribune Tower, headquarters of the Chicago Tribune. It was completed in 1925, designed by Howells and Hood. They actually won a design competition, a $50,000 prize for this. An outlier though, because actually this area was considered a harbor at one point. And so in 1968, the building on the left was completed. It's called Lake Point Tower. It's a mid-century modern building, but not rectangular. It actually has 3 wings with a round restaurant on top.